Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2011 Monash Law School Great Law Week debate. I begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of this land, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. With thanks to our host for Monash Law School, the topic for tonight's debate is, and social media is free speech gone mad. In tonight's debate, the classic 3-on-3 format entitles the speakers to a substantial exercise of free speech using that profoundly low-tech medium, one's actual voice. Each speaker may free speechialise for a total of 8 minutes. At the conclusion of the debate, you, the audience, will have the right to exercise some free speech of your own by grilling our speakers in a brief question time. Then, in a demonstration of outstanding civic participation, you'll decide the winner of this debate with the infamous hypometer, thereby proving that free speech matters not as off if no one can hear you. Can I ask you to give a collective welcome to the Affirmative? It's the youthful team of Damien Bruckard, Kieran and Fiona Praps. Clearly posted this event on Facebook and got a few acceptances to the invitation. This is the second year of the kids versus grown-ups format, and given tonight's topic, they are arguably at a structural advantage. Grown-ups, beware. They know how to use things like the interwebs and MySpace and TweetTube. The negative side tonight comprises the wonderful Shivani Pillai, the feisty Liberty Sanger, and the Honourable Justice Elise Lazarus. Please make them up. Our judging panel tonight comprises Luke McGreevy from the Monash Association of Debaters, or MAD, Professor Sarah Joseph from Monash's famous Caston Centre for Human Rights Law, Michael Brett Young, the CEO of the Law Institute, and Joe Kirby from the Victoria Law Foundation. Please make them much more appreciated. Now, please note, though our participants will be speaking freely tonight, their words do not necessarily represent their own views or the views of the organisations they represent. You can check out their Facebook status updates later to find out what they really think. Debaters, I will ring the bell once at 7 minutes and twice at 8 minutes. After this time, your freedom to remain standing will be significantly curtailed. For the lawyers amongst you, there will be no appeal for process. You may be summarily punished, but at the very least, I may give you a hiding at the after party. So, on to the debate. The phenomenal growth in social media is perhaps the defining societal trend of this century. It has, to a large degree, supported George Washington's maxim that if the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent you may be led like sheep to the slaughter. So much so that there are 3 Facebook groups devoted to the topic of sheep slaughtering alone. The internet has taken us light years ahead when it comes to freedom of speech, and the advent of social media has given us even more channels through which we can communicate our ideas and opinions. We can get virtually anything off our collective chests via sites like Facebook, Twitter, WordPress and YouTube. Freedom of speech, roughly defined as the freedom to speak without censorship or limitation, however, doesn't necessarily mean that we're free to go around saying whatever we want about whomever we want, whenever we want to, unless, of course, you're voting Joyce. Rather, some balance needs to be struck. Or does it? Well, let's find out from our beloved debaters tonight. Let's kick it on over to the people who actually know what they're talking about. And I'll be calling up in a moment Damien Bruckard as the first affirmative who leads the proceedings tonight. He and I have 10 mutual friends on Facebook, though I query how easily either of us knows Simon Cream. He apparently thinks false moustaches are hilarious, and he loves a silly cat. He is best mates with someone who works for me, so as a result of my extensive face stalking today, I now have a terrific shot of both of them dancing around in red underwear to add to the employee file. It must be a Melbourne High thing. Along with his teammate Kieran, he has won the Monash University senior and first year boots. He is an avid Facebook user. I'm told he never goes on a date without first doing push-ups, and he thinks his glasses make him look like Clark Kent. So, to commence proceedings this evening, it is the Superman of University of Damien, Mr. Damien Bruckard.
Thank you, Will, for destroying my career before this already begun. Social media is taking over our lives. Facebook has over 600 million members, certain age and don't have Facebook, then you're going to be a complete outcast. Even organisations like BP, which destroys the environment with natural resources, killing huge marine life, they have a Facebook page as well. They have Facebook friends. Social media is everywhere. And because social media is essentially about communicating between people, it's important that we recognise its context in free speech. So as the Affirmative team, a bunch of Generation Ys, knowledgeable about social media and how it's ruining our lives, and especially our exams, we're both the perpetrators and the victims of these laws. And we'll be arguing that social media is indeed free speech going mad. What makes communicating on social media sites like Facebook or Twitter different to communicating in person? Well, in real life, people say and do things all the time without thinking about the consequences, but the consequences aren't that great. But when you do it on Facebook, when you say something on Facebook or when you say something on Twitter, the consequences are permanent. What you say is permanent and you tell the entire world. And once you write something online, it's very difficult to backtrack. So people have extraordinarily broad freedom to say what they like on Facebook, except they're abusing that freedom. A couple of examples. Firstly, because of social media, it's a lot easier to bring your work home with you. And this is occasionally done unwittingly. An employee at the American Red Cross recently tweeted, instead of tweeting using his personal account, though, he tweeted using the organisation's account. And apparently, the American Red Cross is going out for a massive night tonight. He's bought 4 packs of Monash touch beer, and when we drink it right, we're getting footy. Secondly, often unwittingly as well, people give away way too many personal details. My favourite example here is Julian Assange. Now, unsurprisingly, Julian Assange uses internet dating. And for some reason, he thought that this would be a nice profile to prove himself. Warning. Want a regular down-to-earth guy? Keep moving. I am not the guy you're looking for. Save us both while you still can. I'm looking for a siren for a love affair. Children, and occasionally criminal conspiracy. I am 87% slut. So, putting aside how he thought this could have possibly got him a girlfriend, the problem is that the information is permanent. And this is something that I'm sure he's regretting right now as he's trying to defend his reputation in the media and facing breakthroughs. So, in addition to this, people are becoming obsessed with Facebook that they're even naming their children after this. Children after Facebook. CNN reported a couple months ago that an Egyptian couple called their second child Facebook in order of the organisation's role in the revolution. So we welcome to the world Facebook Jamal Ibrahim. Well, it's difficult to imagine this kid without growing up without years and years of bullying, psychological abuse. At least he'll be much more popular than his older brother MySpace. When people do stupid things offline as well. But when you do it online, there's limited space, which means that you're much more likely to slip up. So when Catherine Devney got fired for making a salacious remark about Bindi Irwin, I hope she gets laid, she was restrained by the 140-character limit in Twitter. Who knew? Who knows? Maybe she didn't mean that. Maybe what she meant to say was, I hope that after reaching 18, Bindi Irwin is able to enter into a consensual, non-platonic relationship with another person, whether that be heterosexual, homosexual, or otherwise. Sexuality is a spectrum, and everybody has the right to endure it. So her comments, because she used Twitter, were completely misrepresented. The point I'm making here was once made eloquently by Martin Luther King. With great freedom comes great responsibility. Or maybe that was Spider-Man. Martin Luther King does seem to get misquoted these days. In either case, people don't use their newfound freedom of speech responsibly at all. The second argument is that there is so much hype out there at the moment, especially on Twitter and especially on Facebook, about the role that social media plays in revolutions. We talk about the Twitter revolution in Iran, the role that Facebook played in the Arab Spring uprisings. The State Department has even said that sites like Facebook give the US a significant advantage over terrorists because Al-Qaeda is so Web 1.0. But we don't buy it in the Affirmative team, because there's a fundamental difference between how people use Facebook and how they start revolutions. In essence, revolutionaries assume massive responsibility through action at high possible risk. Facebook users avoid all responsibility through procrastination. Facebook is banned at work because people would do no work, not because they would stage a coup against their managers. If the same people that use Facebook were really behind the revolution in the Arab world, what would it have looked like? Well, yes, they may have all convened on Tahrir Square, but they would have been talking to each other. They would have been on their iPhones tweeting smart-ass comments to one another. They may have liked the revolution, but they certainly wouldn't have fought for it. But Facebook does have a role in organising social events, and it has organised two massive events. These are the two biggest Facebook events ever organised, and they're important. The Silent Disco Party in London in 2006, where thousands of people spontaneously went to an underground warehouse, brought their own MP3 device, and danced by themselves. This is the power of the social media to bring people together and communicate. The second was Worldwide Pillow Fight Day, which was awesome, but it was no revolution. Thirdly, I want to talk about how social media actually changes the way we interact with each other in the real world. So while Facebook and Twitter bring us closer together through more communication, the way that people communicate is not as good. Facebook makes people narcissistic, or at least it brings out their narcissistic tendencies. In my personal opinion, as you've heard from Will, people that use Facebook seek validation from others by trying to get as many friends as possible. Although I'm going to make an exception by not adding Will for now. You derive your status from how many friends you have. An example comes from the opposition side, actually, where Justice Slasbury has a Facebook fan page. Although, when we checked it last night, unfortunately, he only had one fan. And you can't even see who the fan is on Facebook. We could take a guess. It may be Lily, it may be Shivani, it may be Lex himself, but I encourage you all to add him. It also allows people to thrive on shallow relationships. And the flip side of this, though, is that people become voyeurs of their own friends. And even us on the affirmative side, we aren't immune from Facebook stalking. For example, we tried to Facebook stalk our opposition, and we tried firstly with Liberty Sanger, but all that we could find was a special 9/11 anniversary subway voucher. Social networking hasn't even changed, has also changed the way we date. Internet dating is no longer just the refuge of weird cyber terrorists like Julian Assange. It's actually incredibly popular. For working people, and people specifically not in my age bracket, it's even become normal. Now, in a relationship, is the highest form of commitment. Till death do us part has been replaced with till Facebook do us part. The courting process now involves stalking your prey online, possibly through the social network that we've seen on the front page of The Age today, and then poking them. I have a friend who's flirting with a girl on Facebook. He's upset about how it's going, and last time I asked him why, he said it was like talking to a wall. So, what have I told you? The problem with arguing against social media is that you have to sound like a really old man, so excuse my judgment. So what have we told you so far? Firstly, that people do stupid things that are funny on social networking sites. Secondly, that in the words of Malcolm Gladwell, the revolution will not be tweeted. And thirdly, that social media turns us into vain perverts. Facebook is like jail. You sit around and waste time, you write on walls,